myself on mute. Hey guys, thank you for joining me. Who's that, Tabitha? I'm looking on my phone and it's so little. There you are. Hi Tabitha, thank you for joining me. Hi Alma, thank you for joining me. I'm doing great, thank you. How are you? Tonight's show is going to be a little bit of a grab bag, so if I seem like I'm all over the places, because I really didn't have a topic for tonight, but I did just meet with a tutoring client, and she did bring up a really good point about learning and being in the program, a medical coding program. So I want to talk about her experience. She gave me permission to talk about it, and so we're going to be talking about that. I'm also going to be talking about remote medical coding and how to set yourself up for success if that is what you really want to do. Um, it's a different world out there right now with medical coding because of the pandemic, and because of that, it's changed a lot of the rules, which were before, you had to have experience, hands down, without a question. You had to have experience. There was no getting around that, and now it's like, okay, we'll train you to work at home, but the rest is up to you. So, we'll see how it goes. Hi Hilda, thank you for the blue heart. um Tabitha says, good, glad it's Friday. Friday is more like it, right? Hi, Christina. Thank you for joining me. Alrighty. So I have my coffee and I'm ready to go. Oh, and you guys are under no obligation, okay? But it was brought up last night about the what is it? What is it called? The super chat. So I did enable it. So I don't know if y'all can see it, but I see it on my thing here. It looks a little different. So that's hopefully it works, right? And I appreciate you guys just being here. I mean, of course, no tip is necessary, but if you want to, it's totally fine. I acknowledge all messages anyway. So thank you guys for being here, and thank you guys for joining me on this Friday night. Friday. It's a little bit of a late start, but that's okay. You're all here, I'm here, and I guess we can go ahead and get started. If you are brand new to my channel, welcome. I am Blue. I'm a medical coder. Today, I am talking about what to do when you are in a medical coding program and you are not learning anything. What do you do now? And I'm also going to be talking about remote medical coding and how to set yourself up for success. So let's get into it. So tonight I had a client for tutoring, and she was telling me about her experience with a school. And she's gone to this adult learning center. And at this adult learning center, I'm not really sure how they have it set up with their books, but for some reason, the instructor was telling the students that they could not take their books home. But at the same time, this same instructor is telling the students, hey, you have a test in 2 days. Now, I've said this before, and I've said this the last couple of nights. Adults learn differently. We have a lot more things on our mind than students that are like in school. If you're in school and you're in high school or middle school or whatever, that's different. I mean, your job in school when you're a kid is to be a kid and go to school. You don't have to think about mortgage, you don't have to think about rent, you don't have to think about car bills or anything like that. So with all of that, your learning is going to be different. Your learning style is going to be different. Definitely you will be able to do study sessions, cram study sessions, whereas an adult, the key to adult education is repetition. So at this school that the client is going to, or went to, they didn't want them taking their books home, which doesn't make sense to me right away, because if you can't take your books home, how are you supposed to study? It's not like this is something that you can just roll out of bed and be trained to do. You can't. You need to have time to go over these things, the medical terminology, the anatomy, the pathophysiology, and then the diagnosis coding and the procedure coding. You have to have time with those things. This is not something that is like, okay, whatever. We have to know what doctors know while never having gone to medical school. And there's no truer saying than that. And so with that, when you are doing this, right, you should be able to take your books home. And I guess that's a question now that I have to tell my people is, when you're signing up for these schools, if you have to go to some place where you're physically going there, ask them if you could take the books home. Because in this situation with this client, she said that they were not allowed to. Well, she defied what they said, her and a couple of the other students, and they took their book home. They were going to bring it right back, and these are the books that they had paid for. This is not something that was given to them like for free. These were books that they had actually paid for. But for some reason, the teacher just did not want them to take these books home. So the teacher said that, hey, who took their books home? Well, of course, the client confessed, and so did two others, And so she said, well, I want to see you all after class. And she's like, well, no, y'all are dismissed right now because y'all took y'all's books home, defying me, right? So the client went to the principal of the school and said, hey, I'm just trying to learn. These are our books that we paid for. Why are we getting penalized for using our books so we can study more to try to understand what we're doing when we have a test in 2 days? And so, of course, naturally, the principal, having some common sense, said that makes sense for you to take your book home. I don't know why you were told not to take your book home. So after that, they were allowed to take their books home, which, again, not all teachers are going to be good teachers. Let's just say that, okay? Because there are some teachers who have no business being a teacher. And I said it. Yes, I did. And I'm not trying to be defensive or anything like that, but really, if you know you're teaching adults learn differently, and they need to have a chance to have their books. The teacher's defense was that this is their job, going to school, and that the taking the books home was like taking the medical records home, which they said, well, if you're in school or you're at work, you're not allowed to take medical records home. Well, no, duh. But at the same time, these are not medical records. They're scenarios. There's not even PHI in these at all. So these are all written for examples so that you can learn. So the fact that she said that was just ridiculous. And so that's when the principal told them, just go ahead and take your books home if you want to take your books home. I never had this issue when I was in school. When I was in school, we were given our books as we got to that section, because what they were finding out was that, and how I paid was the state paid for me to go back to school. So I gave them a voucher, and they gave me my books as I completed each section. I got my next set of books. That was my incentive, because we'll work for books. I am that way. I love books. I'm a huge book lover, as you can see. But I do this, right, because I love books. I've always loved books. And that was always my incentive to get through the course faster, because I could get a new set of books. And they were saying that a lot of people were dropping out, and it wasn't feasible to order books, and then people are not completing the program. So that made sense to me, right? But again, this lady had already paid for those books, and why they couldn't take them, I don't know. But she was also continuing to tell me that she didn't feel like they learned anything. And I can see just by meeting with her that there's a lot of holes, right, in the instruction that she did get. And you will find that there are some teachers that will proctor you from a book, and they won't teach you any of those critical thinking skills. They won't have you think outside the box on anything. And so because of that, you may feel like you're going to be lost. This is where you have to kind of find your bearings. And I know it's hard, especially in an industry that you've never been in, but that's why there's channels like mine. And I can only vouch for myself. I do not watch any other YouTubers that are medical coders. I watch only mine because, well, naturally, because I do my own, right? I don't watch my own, but I do my own. Although if I do pre-record, I listen to the playback to kind of help me with my speech, right? But I only do that because I only want myself in my own head. I don't want anybody else's influence. My stuff here is clean and it's all original. That's the way I'm going to keep it. That's the way that it has always been. So with that, when you're looking at a teacher who's just proctoring from the book and saying, okay, class, flip to chapter 5, and that's where you start, and then your break is in 15 or an hour or so or whatever. That's not teaching. And she was saying that the teacher was getting defensive because she would get defensive if the students was asking her questions. So again, if you have this, then you know you're going to be on your own. There is no trying to fight it. There is no trying to complain about it, because some people are not as professionally mature to accept criticism. There's people that are like that. They cannot accept criticism. They won't. And because they won't, they make the poorest leaders, because not everybody that's in a leadership position is as enlightened as they should be, because there are some leaders that could use a leadership course or 2 or 3 or 4, because just because you're in that position doesn't mean that you know everything. And a good leader will know how to pull out the strengths from their students and to be able to use that to encourage them, to propel them forward. Because again, adult learning is way different from child learning. Child learning is something, I think in terms of ease, it would be a little bit more, because children tend to do as they're told. Most of the time, if they're in school, they know they're supposed to. However, when they get to those higher ages, they tend to do whatever they want. But, with adults, it's hard to engage them, because now you have a bunch of other factors involved, which is how do they learn? And, what do they have going on? Do they have a supportive system around them? And that's another thing too. Learning medical coding is an independent action a lot of the time. And if you're lucky enough to get into a program and you find somebody else that's like you, like-minded like you, and wants this because it's their second or third career, and they're really serious about it, and they want to engage, they want to learn. If you're lucky enough to find that, that's great. If not, then you have to go at this alone, and you have to do a lot of this on your own, where you're starting to teach yourself. Now, if you feel like your teacher is not teaching you, this is the best thing that you can do for yourself, is to open up each and every single one of these books and look at each page by page. And I'm going to keep saying it because it's true. The more you get accustomed to this book, the more used to the books that you get, your diagnosis book and your procedure books, the more used to them and the more familiar you get with them, the easier it's going to be when you start to learn. And you're not going to be so lost when you're trying to look up external cause codes, or you're going to look on the table of chemicals. I have to kind of not say certain words. But if you're going to look up the table of chemicals, if you're going to look up things in the index, you're going to know exactly where to go. This is not something that can be bypassed. A good teacher will teach you these things, and they will tell you this is how you learn. If not, it's just like teachers, they just don't care. And to me, that's sad, because you're ill preparing people to be out in the workforce. And then when you get somebody like that who's had poor teaching and they get out into the workforce, then it's going to take another miracle to get somebody who's actually working there to be patient enough to teach this person. And so that's not fair to the medical field, because again, when they hire a medical coder, they're going to expect a certain level of knowledge because you passed a standardized exam. And if you can't get to that, if you can't get that knowledge, because they don't know about coding, that's what we're supposed to know. We're supposed to know how all of these rules are. And so they may see that you're doing something that looks like coding. That's fine with them, but you still have to make sure that that coding is actually correct. And it's going to take you looking at the rules, reading the coding guidelines, getting familiar with the books, going through workbooks like this one. This is the one that I do recommend. However, there's the CPC exam book that you can get that has the rationale in it. But this one I do recommend. If you're going to, even if you're studying for the CCS, the CCA, or the CCSP, you can still use this book to practice for the outpatient setting. Now, funny little tip too, what I learned. My client had a 2021 edition of this book. The exact same thing, 2019. This is the exact same thing as that other book, the 2021. So you can definitely study with this book. You can definitely get it at a cheaper price than the current books, because if it's the same thing, There's maybe a few codes that are updated in this book that, either got changed or updated or revised or whatever. And that's an easy fix to find, but the rationale still stays the same, right? The fundamentals of coding still stay the same. So I do recommend this book if you're studying for the outpatient side. Go ahead and get this book. It is cheap. It is on Amazon. And like I said, I'm always looking for the deals when it comes to learning. And I do believe in this book because it's got a lot of really good illustrations in it. It has the answers and the rationale. And then as you're going and you're working through the book, it's not going to make sense at first, especially if you're going through this on your own. But again, you can find tutors, you can find mentors. There's a ton of tutors on LinkedIn if you don't want me. I am a tutor myself, okay? And my rates are in the description box below when I update this video. If you look on any of my other videos, that's all there. All of my contact information, my rates for tutoring, my rates for resume reviews, they're all there. It's all reasonable. So I meet with y'all over Zoom if that's what you want to do. If you want to do tutoring with me, we set up a Zoom session. And, we go over what questions you have. Now, sometimes people think that maybe I set up like a curriculum, and I don't. My purpose of being a tutor is to find out where your weaknesses are. And even if it's just listening to you and maybe going through a few of the problems, I'm so seasoned that I know where your problems are and I'm able to identify them. So that's, that's not hard for me. But at the same time, if you're having to do that little bit of investment, while you may not want to do that because you already paid for the school, sometimes it is a necessary evil to be able to get through this. Because again, there's nothing that you can do. That money is already spent and it's gone. And if you had a terrible experience with that school, you can leave. What is it? Reviews everywhere for that school if you want to, or wherever that they have reviews for the school. You can always leave those there because that is unacceptable, and it should be unacceptable for crappy programs like that to exist. But they do. Sometimes people, they get into these positions of being a teacher, and it doesn't necessarily make them know everything. But in this book, look what they cover. They say the business of medicine. They talk about understanding RBRVS. RBRVS. I always make sure I say that correctly. Medical necessity, fraud and abuse, the OIG work plan. And they do talk about AAPC because this is an AAPC book, okay? And then they talk about medical terminology and anatomy review. Going through the workbook itself, taking it chapter by chapter, and not trying to race through, but actually taking the time to read the questions first before you start reading the chapter. Read the questions first. So that way what are they looking for? What are they going to ask me on? You may not memorize it, but it's going to be fresh in your mind if you read that first. So read those questions first, then get into reading the chapter. And so that will kind of help you that way. Then they talk about the introduction to the diagnosis coding. For ICD-10-CM in this book, it's not very heavy. This is very heavy on procedure coding. So again, if you're struggling trying to learn diagnosis coding, even for the CPC, even when you take your CPC, you're still going to have to know diagnosis coding, even though it's not that heavy on that exam. But if you want to get this book, now this book is it is a 2019 book, and it is the ICD-10-CM and ICD-10-PCS with the answers. Now, I recommend this book because even if you are needing to study for just a diagnosis, this covers diagnosis. You can skip all of the PCS stuff if you want to. Naturally, if you don't have the book and if you don't have a purpose of learning PCS, that's fine. But at least go over the CM stuff because the CM stuff in here is pretty well written, and I like the way that it's written. So again, that's something that you can use to study with on your own. And then sometimes when you're studying on your own and you're not learning from the school becomes a supplement. Rather than you supplementing your own learning, the school becomes a supplement because you're not really learning anything from them. And so the best thing that you can do is just accept it and move forward because that's going to happen. And if the teacher gets snappy and doesn't want to answer your questions, it's sometimes because they don't know how to teach. they don't know how. And they will get impatient, and not everybody is patient when it comes to teaching. And not everybody who has experience is as patient either. They should be, but they're not always. So just keep that in mind. Different personalities too, and sometimes the teacher may see that you're not putting forth an effort, because there's times when I've seen students say, well, I just don't know the answer, and they're not really making an effort to try to look things up. Then that's when I can see that, I can see that, and I can understand that from the teacher. But at the same time, your job as a teacher is to find out how people learn, so that way you can teach them the way that they learn. And then once you get them in that hook, then you can move forward. But again, this book is going to break down every single chapter. Okay, it's going to break down your CPT and your surgery guidelines, your HCPCS level 2, and your modifiers. And then chapter 5 is covering the integumentary system, then the musculoskeletal, the respiratory, the cardiovascular, the digestive, the urinary, the female reproductive, the endocrine, the eye and ocular adnexa, and auditory systems, anesthesia, radiology, pathology, and laboratory, evaluation and management. Obviously, you would want the more current ones to go over, because this is dated, because obviously of the updates from last year. The medicine section, which is quite extensive, and then they have the tips for taking the exam, and then they have the appendixes with all the answers. So again, you can actually get this book, and it is the same as the current book, so just maybe with a few updates. And this is a 2019 book. So again, it's very good. I'm going through it currently myself, flipping through it again, because that's what I do to stay on top of things. And plus, I want to know what I'm suggesting to you all, because I won't suggest something that I would not use myself. Okay. Let's catch up on all these comments. All right. Okay, come on. Why are we getting stuck? Hello. Here we go. All right. So Alma says hello. Thank you for the blue hearts, Alma. Hi, Hilda. And Tabitha said glad it's Friday. Hi, Christina. Hi, Adriana. I love that cowboy hat. Hi, Ellie. Thank you for the blue heart. Adriana says, that's crazy. I went to Everest and paid for my books, and for that reason, we got to take our books home. And see, she paid for her books as well. And it's just like, that doesn't make sense. Like, why the teacher didn't want to let them take the books home? But she says, it's like taking your work home if you're a medical coder and you're trying to take records home. That does not make any sense to me, but whatever. Alani, hi, Alani. Hi, Hannah. Thank you for the blue heart. Ellie, I'm having a hard time coding CPT with HCPCS modifier. Alma, same here. I feel I did not learn anything when I was attending my school. Christina, at Ellie, is there anything I can help explain celebrity? Online tutoring, very cool. Hilda says, is the CPC study guide or prep? Could you show the book up close, please? And then Tabitha says, I used the CPC study guide and it helped me to pass the exam. I studied all of the questions in it. It's this one. It's a study guide. Celebrity says, I'm still paying the federal loan off. Jeez. And then Ellie says, Christina, thank you. I am taking an online program and still on the musculoskeletal system. All right, so you see that? And see, that's the one that I recommend when it comes to breaking down the CPT side. But I did notice something. I did notice that with the some of the codes that they selected in here, they selected some, but they didn't select all that I would have selected. So there was one that I was going over with the client, and it was talking about the integumentary system. And they were doing a removal, right, of a basal cell carcinoma. But they picked the two main diagnoses, obviously, but they didn't select the allergy to codeine. Now, that would be important to know. And so that I would have picked up, because when you see extra diagnoses like that on there, that's what I would pick up. But again, the CPC exam is multiple choice, so whatever they have there is whatever they're going to pick up. But no, in the real world, you would have to pick up those allergies that the patient has to those types of things that they could potentially take. Same thing if it was with penicillin, right? Because that could really harm the patient, right? So those are things that you have to kind of look at with a critical eye and see when you're studying with books like this. So again, there's going to be some things that I didn't totally agree with, but for the most part, everything is spot on. It's right on the money. It's going to give you that broad stroke knowledge that you need. And so that's why I still recommend this book anyway. And yes, I am all with AHIMA, but I do recommend AAPC products because they have a lot of good products. And like I said, I'm equal opportunity. I'm about the field. I'm not about, East Coast versus West Coast. I'm not into all that. To me, that's just stupid. And when people look at that and they do that, it's just ridiculous. Hi, Johanna. Johanna says, I can buy that book if I'm going to take the CCA test. Yes, and like I said, if you're taking any of the AHIMA exams, you can definitely study with the AAPC books, like for the CPC prep and for the CPC study guide. See, I've been saying the prep because there's a book out there where it's the mock test for the CPC, but this one is the study guide, and it still has 200 questions in it. So, and they're very comprehensive. There's a mix of questions, and there's a mix of op notes in here. So if you're looking for op notes, this is a good practice book to practice with anyway. So again, this is going to give you that practice on the outpatient side because that's what the CPC exam covers, but you can definitely use this book to help you study for a CCA, the CCS, or the CCSP, okay? Because the CCA and the CCS both cover outpatient coding as well as inpatient coding, and the CCSP covers only the outpatient side. Okay, so just keep that in mind. So when I was studying for the CCSP, I definitely did use this book and the other book from AAPC to practice the outpatient stuff. But I didn't practice a lot, but I did practice some because, of course, you want to still study anyway, even though I'm pretty proficient on the outpatient side. So why would I need to study? But you just want to do that just as extra precaution. Hilda says, you're the best. Thank you. Thank you. Let's see. So fashion. Did you know that the CPC exam is less 50 questions and 4 hours? I did. And I actually did a show about that. Yes, I did. Christina, the CPC also added a case study section now. Hilda, the CPC book has the rationale in it too. Yes, they do have the answers and the rationale, which that's why I suggest it, because if you are studying on your own and you're having this problem where the school is not teaching you and things like that, that's the kind of books that you need, is the one with the answers in it. Because when I was studying for the CCS, right, and I have no inpatient medical coding experience, so I had to learn from the book. Now, I took an inpatient coding boot camp, and that was through HC Pro. I do recommend it. However, it is a little pricey. It's over $1,000. So yeah, but you have to have some background knowledge in order for it to make sense, okay? But for me to actually get practice and know kind of what I was doing a little bit better, I made sure that I looked at the answers when I didn't get them correct. So what I did was Optum 360. You guys know how much I love them, but this is not an ad, but Optum, so with Optum, in the back of their book, because all publishers are different. Oh, let's not do this. All publishers are different, and there's going to be some publishers that have more information in it and others that do not. Now, for me, I have trusted Optum 360 my whole career. These books are very comprehensive. They have a lot of information in there that is not available in other books. The books that you use do make a difference. There are tons of definitions and helpful notes throughout, But in this book, in this ICD-10 PCS manual from Optum 360, and yes, this is the 2021 version, and it's with all of them, okay? That with Optum 360, their ICD-10 PCS, they have a quiz in the back, and it's hundreds of procedures that you can look up, and then in the next part of the appendix, it also has the answers for each of those. And so that's good. That to me was practice. I kept practicing with those. And on the ones that I struggled with, like the cardio procedures, what I did was I didn't even try to frustrate myself. What I did was I looked at the answer and I looked back at the table and how can I associate what I see on this table with what the answer is, and how do I train myself? How do I learn this better? And so that was what I did when I was trying to learn something that I had no exposure to, and I knew no one who could train me. There's not anybody that can train me at my facility on inpatient procedure coding like this. And so that's why I had no one to reach out to. I'm literally having to do this on my own. And unfortunately for medical coders, the students of medical coding, they find this out late. They find this out when they're in the program and they have to figure the stuff out on their own. It's once you accept it, you got to start learning this stuff on your own, and you start learning how to look in these books, and you start taking advantage of like books like this CP, like the CPC book that explains things very straightforward. Okay. I recommend this over Bucks. I do. And it's not anything against Bucks. It's just, to me, the way that things are worded in Bucks, it seems like, well, because I have Bucks books, and it seems like the way that it's written is written for somebody that already knows what they're doing. It's not very beginner user friendly, like what I see from the CPC book, or what I see from books like this from AHA, the American Hospital Association. Like this, very good. Okay. And again, this is very good too. So I really do credit these two books for helping me to pass my exams. And, that's what I want to pass on to you guys. Don't get discouraged if your teacher is not teaching you. That's what happens sometimes. And these schools are going to sweet talk you. They're going to tell you everything that you want to. Oh, you want to work at home? Oh, yeah, you could be with your kids and you could stay at your house and you don't have to get up and get dressed. I don't know why people would sell that for a profession, but that's just me. I like to dress up. I like to go to work dressed up. I do. But that's me. There's not, some people just like to, I like to stay in jeans and a t-shirt, and that's not me. I don't do jeans. I don't do t-shirts on the regular. I do not. It's usually something's going on, or, I have to go do something or whatever. Maybe in jeans, maybe in a t-shirt. But other than that, I'm dressed up. But anyway, yeah, that's how they sell the field of medical coding, because they want people to spend the money. If you actually told people, hey, we have this program, you're going to have to be learning on your own. And yeah, it's going to be hard for you when you try to go out and find your first job and, all of these things. If you told them all the negative things, that recruiter would be fired, because they would never get anybody into the program. Once they have you into the program, once they have your money, then whatever they give you is whatever they're going to give you. And so unfortunately, that's when you get these terrible teachers that show. And that's why you have to ask to speak to the teacher, ask to speak to the instructor, ask them when was the last time they were in the real world coding, actually coding. Are they a credentialed medical coder? What credential do they have? Even though they say, well, I have a degree. Having a degree doesn't necessarily make you automatically a teacher, because in the degree programs, those are meant for people who are going to be in managerial positions. And the coding actually in those programs is very small. It is, if you take the time to look at any CAHIM approved AHIMA program for the RHIA or the RHIT, you will see that the classification coding systems is a very small portion of that program. A lot of it has to do with the managerial side. So again, if that instructor has the degree and they say, well, yes, and I also have the CCS and the CDIP and all this other good stuff. Okay, great. That may be somebody that's a little bit more engaged. The industry needs better teachers. They need more detailed teachers, and not teachers that are going to say, well, I'm right and you're wrong. It has to be somebody that is willing to say, yes, I may make mistakes. I make mistakes. Me. I admit it, and I have said it, and I have never denied it. I have never said, "Oh, I'm this, high speed whatever." No, but I do my research, and when I see something and I'm coding it, I know that I have to be able to fight for that code selection that I just did. So I better make sure that it's right. And so that's what I would want to put out to my students if I was teaching, right? If I was being a teacher and doing all that. But there are some teachers that, if you start to question them and ask them, then they get upset, and then they don't want to teach you, and then they want to give you an attitude, or they want to sit there and be smug, in which I've heard of those. I've heard those stories. I've had many clients who've come to me and their teachers get smug with them when they're just asking them a question. And so that to me is wrong. There's no excuse for it. None. Oh, here we go. Idiot. Let me get this troll out of here. All right. Where are we at? Hi, Rochelle. Thank you for the blue hearts. Tabitha, yes, I took a coding program through a local community college, and the instructor didn't teach anything. I had to teach myself how to code. I used a Cpc study guide and practice online questions to pass. That is awesome. Thank you. There we go. Another one. All right. So true, Blue. That happened to me, but I'm not giving up. And that's what I like to hear. I like to hear when people don't give up. I like to hear when they say, okay, well, I have this little bit of adversity and it's not going to stop me from doing what I need to do. That's good. And because the worst thing that can happen is people get discouraged and then they quit. Well, they quit, but then like the school still has the money, right? I want to sneeze again, y'all. The school still has the money. They have all these thousands of dollars, and then oftentimes you're stuck paying this stuff back, which is why I've never been an advocate for student loans. I don't like student loans because it's like, how do you know what kind of quality education you're going to get, and so, but yeah, you don't want to lose, guys. Don't lose, and don't let somebody that can't teach discourage you from, getting through a program. And the lady that I was working with earlier, the client, she was saying that that teacher actually dropped another student from the class simply because she was asking questions. So that to me is just like, are you for real? That's the point. That's what you're supposed to do. It's not that medical coding is never of, you're going to do this, you're going to do this, and you're going to code it this way. We are supposed to question. We are supposed to ask. We are supposed to make sure. Because if you're just doing whatever somebody else tells you, if that is actually wrong, you're still liable because you were the one who put your name on it. So think about that, guys, Hilda troll alert. Tangela, hey Blue. One of my coworkers said that her coding class started with 10 people, but ended up with 2 in the end. And that's what happened with my client too. She said there's 21 people that started and only 16 finished through the program. And that the teacher had actually said 21 was too many for her, so she had to break it up into 2 classes. And I'm like, you can't teach 21 people? Really? You can't teach 21 people? I was a brand new medical coder, not even a year in, teaching a room full of 60 residents, 60 surgical residents, and I was not even a coder for a year yet, already teaching with 60 surgical residents. Sit down. Please, and get out. If you are not going to take the profession seriously, And the fact that you can't teach that many people, come on, what are you doing? You know, just because you can have the position doesn't mean you should, you know? Christina, I'm still trying to figure out when I'm going to take the CPC again. I'm afraid to do it online again after my experience, and there are no in-person sites close to me. Well, then I would plan on taking a trip then. Because to me, if you're going to do that online version, that's too much stress. It's too much stress. I mean, I understand why some people have to do it, and I get it. I totally get it. But if you can absolutely avoid it, I would rather go to a place where it's on them. It's on them to provide you the area, to provide you, you know, whatever. I would plan on a trip then to wherever city that nearby that's going to have something available. Plan it out, plenty of time in advance, and pay for your hotel so you can stay over the night and you can do all of those things and go to the place. I would rather do that than sit there and have to be stuck at a computer. And then I don't know if something's going to go wrong with the internet. I don't know if something's going to go wrong with the camera. I don't know if something's going to be wrong with the proctor. There's just too many variables. What if the power goes out? Oh, no, 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 no. If I know, excuse me, that I'm going someplace, then I know that it's going to be safe and I'm going to be there, and you know, that's what I'm going to do. Because that's what I would recommend. I mean, Christina says, I was looking on AAPC's site and everything nearby is already filled for the year. Already? So cutting down the exam to 4 hours and supposedly being able to double the time that they can have 2 classes instead of just 1 class, it's already full for the entire year. Really? Like, I don't get it. But guys, there's ways and places to be able to help yourself. And you do have to learn how to help yourself, and going through the books step by step is going to help you. Working through the workbooks is also going to help you. Finding mentors, finding tutors, that will help you. Because again, sometimes you have to kind of take the bull by the horns and do it yourself, because they're not going to show you. It's just like when you get out into the real world too, and you're trying to find your first job, and you're out there and you finally get hired, right? The coders that are on staff may not want to train you either. Even though this is your first job, some of them will not show you that grace because no one showed it to them when they first started, unfortunately. And to me, I've always said that was wrong. I always I pounce whenever there's somebody new. I want to help people that are new because I remember what it was like, you know, when I didn't know and I wasn't sure. There was the guy that worked at the Cancer Therapy Research Center was named Brian, and he was the sweetest guy, and he helped us. But the lady that was our supervisor, Heather, she was a witch. She was mean, and she did not want to help us at all, and she was very rude. And so it's just like, okay, you know, but he was there to always help us, and we learned a lot from him. We didn't learn anything from her, and so because of that, I learned at that point, okay, there's going to be people that will help you and others that won't. And so again, I got lucky though when I went to my second position, and I had my now friend Jessica, but she was my supervisor at the time. She's a bookworm. She's a bookworm, book lover. She's just like me. And so she likes to teach, and so she taught me how to code for professional fee services, which is not an easy animal to begin with, okay? It is very difficult. It is confusing, especially, you know, if you're kind of set in your ways. But me being brand new, I didn't know to be scared, okay? So if you're brand new, don't be scared, but be accepting that there's going to be things that you're going to have to learn on your own. And if it's learning medical coding, you know, you can listen to the examples here that are said in the chat, you know, about people that are having to teach themselves and they're able to do it, you know, so it is possible to do. And especially with the independent study list guide that I have, is a syllabus. It's a whole syllabus right there. You don't even have to go to these schools. This syllabus can, everything listed there is what you need to get started with preparing you for these exams, and there's other things that are supplemented along the way, which is why I always push those out on the feed, on the community tab. So if you follow my page, if you subscribe to my channel, if you hit that notification bell, some people will subscribe and don't hit the notification bell, and that's how they miss out on these things. And if you hit the notification bell, you're always going to get those alerts whenever I do post something. So it's worth it. I always try to post during the day. I try not to post so late at night because I know, like, on the different coasts, but sometimes people just don't sleep. Like, I don't. Sometimes I swear I don't. But let's see what else. Johanna, I work for a dental office, and one coworker told me that she's not a teacher. See, that's horrible. That's horrible. Tangela says, I started doing diagnostic radiology coding this week, and my manager is training me. It's a lot to learn, but I'm positive I can do it with practice. Passing the exam is the beginning, but the real world is different. And that's what I say all the time. But when I said that the first time, I caused panic in the chat. So I don't want to cause panic in the chat, but it is different. What you're going to learn from the books is written properly. It has all the documentation you need. It has everything, all the detail. It's not written by somebody who hasn't had their coffee, is in a bad mood, had a bad day, had a surgery go bad, or had just been yelled at by their boss. Okay, so you have to remember that these doctors, they're human too, and they have feelings, and they get in grouchy moods too, and sometimes they're on point and they're ready to rock and roll, and they do a really good job on their documentation. And that's when I also let them know, hey, you're doing real good, because you don't want to have them have your only interaction be, hey, you're doing something wrong. You need to have it be a good mix of, hey, that was awesome what you did with that note, and whatever it was. Sometimes when I see things that are amazing and brilliant, I will literally run from my office to their office, because we work in the same clinic. Our clinics are side by side. I'm in the podiatry clinic, and the ortho clinic is right next door to it. So I will run over to the other side where they're at, and I will tell them, oh my gosh, and they go, what did I do? What did I do? And I go, nothing bad. I said, it's always good. And then they go, oh, and you should see them. They're all like happy and puffed up, and they're like, hey, yeah, I did it right. But you have to celebrate those wins. When you celebrate the wins, everything starts to flow more naturally. It's the same thing when you're learning medical coding. You have to celebrate those wins. When you start to work with these workbooks, and then you're seeing that you're getting the right answers, that's when you're spot on. Celebrate that win. If you're in a study group, let them know. Obviously, I don't really recommend that a whole lot, because sometimes people get upset. But if you have a good friend that you're studying with, hey, it's about learning. Teach them what you've just learned. So that way, especially if they're receptive to it, it's always a good thing. Tabitha says, I've been coding remotely as a new coder several weeks now and got very lucky. I have a coding coach that I can chat with remotely. So true that the real world is so different from school and studying. Yes, at Christina, at Tabitha. I have been trying to look for companies where I can work remotely. Any tips? One smile. Hey, Blue. My name is BLEU. Thank you. I'm doing the CPC training now with AAPC after I took their anatomy and medical terminology classes. What would you recommend to memorize for the CPC exam? I actually don't recommend memorizing anything. It's too much bandwidth. What you have to do is keep repeating things, and you have to keep going through the workbook and keep having to go through the practices. And I recommend not tabbing the heck out of your book, because if you do, you're going to tear your book up. And people who tab their book are not going through their book regularly. You should be going through your book so frequently while you're studying that you don't need the tabs. So the tabs are actually going to get in your way. So that would be what I would recommend, because that's what I have done all of my years as a medical coder. When I started 13 years ago, They were very strict. AHIMA was very strict. Now, I know AAPC is very lenient. They like their tabs. But AHIMA at the time was very strict. You could not have any tabs on your books. You could not have anything on your books. No loose sticky notes, no nothing. And so that was how I learned. I learned with a clean book. And I still recommend learning with a clean book. And I still recommend testing with a very clean book. But people like the idea of the tabs. They feel like it gives them that extra edge. They feel like it gives them that, okay, I can get through the book quickly. But the thing with the tabs is they can get snagged, they can pull on your pages, and it causes a lot of wear and tear on your book. And by the time you know it, you have a ratty book. And just because you have a ratty book does not mean you're working really hard. It just means that your book is ratty, you know? So you want to keep your books clean. You want to keep as many of those tabs off of there as possible. Now, my client tonight was talking about how she highlights because it helps her. And, you know, I say this a lot, you know, don't write in your books, don't highlight, don't tab, you know, don't. And she said something that kind of like, okay, now that makes sense. Because she's teaching herself, that's why she's doing it. Now, there's been other people that have told me, hey, I highlight because they told me to. She was highlighting because that's the way that she learns. And that makes sense to me. But she says that she's highlighting, and highlighting is different from like writing, you know. Which I don't recommend writing because you're not going to have time to read your notes anyway when you're in the exam. But with her highlighting, that's okay. It's okay to do that. But just keep in mind when you're going through these books and you keep practicing, it's going to be a lot easier, and you're going to find yourself not even needing any of those crutches. The book already has the answers. You just have to learn how to read the book. And you start off by opening the book, each and every single one of them, and going through page by page by page. You don't have to read everything, but you do have to look at all the pages so that you know the layout of the book, you know where to find things, you know what is covered in the appendixes. And I'm going to keep saying it because the appendixes do get neglected. So just make sure that you know that there's a lot of helpful information. There's tables in there that sometimes have the prefixes, suffixes, and root words. I mean, there's like a little list, but it's just very brief, but that can help you because, like I said, if you're struggling with medical terminology, the best thing that you can do is study your prefixes, your suffixes, and your root words. This way you can combine words together to figure them out rather than trying to sit there and frustrate yourself and memorize whole big words. That's just my advice anyway. Tangela, right? Tabitha, knowing your medical terminology and anatomy is very, very important. Johanna, if I have the CCA certification, can I work in the dental department as a biller? Yes. Hi, Nancy. She says, hi, Blue. See you in the morning. Yes, ma'am. Tabitha, I went to a job fair for a local hospital in my area and landed an interview. I took their coding test and passed and then was hired. There you go. Christina, Johanna, Blue always says you don't need a certification as a biller, so you should be okay. Hilda congratulating Tabitha, and then Tabitha says, yes, true, Tangela. So very good. That's very awesome. And you see, it's just being proactive. It's being proactive and not giving up and not looking at all the things that are stacked up against you. The fact that you don't know, and the fact that, you know, it's difficult to find a job, and the fact that it's, you know, you're teaching yourself. Don't look at all those things. This is an adventure, guys. I'm 13 years in, and it's still an adventure for me. I'm still learning. You know, I'm still willing to accept the fact that I don't know everything. I'm never probably going to never know everything. I didn't go to medical school. Sometimes I wish I had went to medical school, but then why would I be a coder? I can just be a doctor. But it would make understanding a lot of this a lot easier, but I have to cut myself some slack. We have to know what doctors know while never having gone to medical school. This does not mean that I need to be, you know, lackadaisical in my study approach. That means I actually need to step it up. You know, I have spent time on the weekends reading the New England Journal of Medicine. Now, does that stuff go over my head? Yes, it does, a lot of the times. However, there's been times when I've read that stuff, listened to myself read it and stumble all over the words, and then I hear the guys talking about it at work, and I'm like, they're talking about a surgery. And I understand what surgery they're talking about because I read. I put myself in those positions where I'm going to have exposure to learn that stuff. again, it's a lifelong learning process. You're never going to stop learning. Never in this field. Because if you don't have to do that, you have to do your continuing education and whatever, that you're doing, whatever specialty you're doing, trying to get better. You have to do those things. So, taking the time to go through these types of things, go through these types of workbooks. This is a good workbook, and it was cheap. It was cheap. Okay. And so, again, it's a 2019 book, has the same exact thing as a 2021 book, the same exact thing. And like I said, some of the codes may have been updated, but it's not so drastic that it would count the whole book out. But yeah, that's one of those things that you can use this book to study even if you're taking an AHIMA exam. Okay, because we are all tested on outpatient or inpatient, right? We're using, what I meant to say is we're using the same books, the same diagnosis book, the same procedure books, and depending on what exam you're taking, but yeah, I mean, we have to use all those same things. But so that's that on that one. But moving right along, setting yourself up for success, working remotely. Now, a lot of people will tell me, Blue, I got into this because I want to work remotely. They're very insistent. To me, I have always said that the best thing that you can do when you first start is to work at a place, then go home and work, because you're in for a battle. Again, just like the person who is having a hard time learning because their teacher is not teaching them, it is going to be the same situation when you're at home if you do not have somebody to coach you through that time. Now, somebody in the audience is having somebody that's training them, and that's great. They're very lucky. This does not always happen. And that's the thing. You have to be prepared for that. So that means you have to know how to do your own research. You have to know how to look at Coding Clinic to see if there's anything that talks about whatever situation that you're having. Like if it's for a particular fracture, then you can go to your Coding Clinic. If you have an encoder, a lot of times they'll have that little stack of books. And you click on that little stack of books and it'll bring up all of your references, and it'll say Coding Clinic. And then you can click on there, and then that's when you can type in, and it's got it all alphabetically listed and everything. And all of these scenarios that have been sent in to Coding Clinic, which you can send in a question to Coding Clinic, it's free to do. But if you send in if you type in whatever it is like a fracture or whatever, all the clinics, the correspondence about fractures will be up there, so that way you can see if there's anything that's similar to your situation to kind of answer some of those questions. Knowing how to look at the book itself for support. The book will tell you if you need to use an add-on code or an additional code for, whatever situation is. Sometimes some of these conditions, it's not just one code you're reporting, but it's actually 2 diagnosis codes, and sometimes it's 3 diagnosis codes for one thing, So it really all depends on that situation. So, knowing how to access those coding clinics rather than having to run back and forth to your coding manager or to your lead coder for help will make them be happy that they hired you because you're not as needy. There's people who are guilty of that, where they need a lot of support. And that's where, like, employers don't want to have to hire somebody that is, so needy, because they want to be able to put a coder in and go. Like I've said before many times, employers are lazy. They want to be able to plug in a coder and you deal with it because they don't understand it and they don't want to have to deal with it. So that's where it's like, you have to learn how to do your research and be ready for that when you are working at home. I've done a video many times, and I always get upset people. Well, I want to work at home. I heard you, but this is why I'm a veteran coder, and this is why you shouldn't. Why you should wait. But some people, they just don't want to listen, and then when they get into the real world, and then they see what it's like working at home, the isolation. Some people don't have a problem with isolation, and I typically don't. Myself, but because I have such an established relationship with my providers, that's part of my problem. You don't get a lot of socialization when you're at home. And well, I have my kids at home, yes, but you can't stop and start every single time being at home with your kids. Okay. And a lot of times working at home, they're going to hold you to a higher standard productivity wise, because you're not going to have all these distractions supposedly. And one lady said that they actually made her sign an agreement that says that she will not care for her children while she's on the clock. Because essentially, it's true. They're paying you to be on the clock so that you can work for them, not take care of your child. So when you do things like that, then they're like, okay, but I mean, it's nice. I have worked at home before. I worked for a level 1 trauma hospital, and I did that in the evenings, and it was nice. I did a lot of really interesting cases. Level 1 trauma, those are like really hardcore traumas. Those are the ones where accidents, all kinds of big wounds and that kind of thing. And these are not for the faint of heart. I mean, this was for people who have advanced knowledge, and that I said that's like the Marine Corps of places that you can work at, because working for a level 1 trauma hospital, you see everything. And trust me, I got good fast, because that's what you do, and you have to be able to maintain productivity. You have to be able to maintain accuracy, and you have to do that while not having anybody else to lean on. I didn't need it to lean on anybody else because I was essentially by myself. There was nobody else in the queue. I was working in the evening hours, so everybody was, because this you could pick your time, and so I would work in the evening hours when there was no one on. And so if I had a question, if I got stuck on something, I had to learn how to look stuff up. But again, I knew where to look. If you're brand new, unless you've been watching my videos and trying to learn how to do research on your own, you may get stuck. So that is just something that you got to be prepared for. There's not going to be anybody that you can be around to bounce ideas off of, because brand new medical coders sometimes have a hard time formulating questions. Even I had a hard time formulating questions. I would tell my friend Jessica, well, she's my supervisor at the time, I would tell her, Jessica, I don't know how to word this. I don't know how to say. And she's like, okay, what do you know? And so I said, okay, well, this is what I know. And so she would know exactly what I was talking about because she had experience. So because she had experience, she was able to help me. But I would do that. And so now I know the difference. So what I tell people that are brand new, if you're gonna insist on being at home and that's what you want to do, just be prepared for the loneliness. Be prepared to be by yourself. Be prepared to be able to shoulder all of this stuff on your own. Because it's coming. No matter how good you think you are, trust me, there's going to be a wake-up call real quick like. And you cannot do anything. You have to be focused. You can't put your desk area out in the living room where everybody can see you willy-nilly. You have to be in a secure area. This is just like if you're going to the office. You can't have your kids looking at your screen either, no matter how little they are. Oh, well, they're only 9. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter, because whatever they see there, they can go and repeat. And just because, you may think that they're not going to say anything or they don't know, you never know. Kids are smart. Kids are real smart. And it's a violation of HIPAA for anybody else but you to see those records. And so you never want to get caught, violating HIPAA. You do, that's your credential right there. And you will never work again if you get caught on something like that. So you have to be mindful. That information has to stay protected at all times. The companies typically do send a computer to you. So it's not that you have to go out and buy your own equipment. You do not use a printer ever. There is no reason to ever print anything at home when you're working from home, because everything is going to be on the computer, on screens. Typically they do send you an extra screen. I had 2 screens, 2 monitors, dual monitors when I worked at home. So that way, it's easier because you have one for the electronic record and then one for the, the encode and the inputting. So that makes it a lot easier. You can actually see. But those are the things that you'll learn over time. You have to take your breaks, because you don't want to sit there and stare. Some people will try to power through their breaks. Don't do it. Don't do it, because it doesn't do you any good to be exhausted, and it doesn't do you any good to be lost and exhausted and then your eyes hurt. So just make sure that you are taking breaks as you're allowed. If you're allowed a 15-minute break every 4 hours, then you need to take that 15-minute break. If you have 30 minutes for lunch, you need to take your 30 minutes for lunch, or your hour or whatever they tell you. But don't start doing this nasty habit of, oh, well, I want to go run an errand, so I'm going to tell my boss I'll be right back. No, it's like you're going to the office. It's not so that you can leisurely go in and out willy-nilly. And people who say that, or who want to do that, I want to be able to go run errands and go do this and go do that. um, that's not conducive to a business that is trying to get these records coded. So you have to look at it. The business is going to come first in their own eyes. That's why I tell you guys, if you're going to take your break, take your break, and take your lunch break. Do those things, but don't try to sit there and say, "Oh, hey, I'm going to leave." You wouldn't do that if you were going to an office. Just saying. um, Hi, Brit. Thank you for joining me. Mallory. Hi. Thank you for the blue heart. Hello. I've been watching your channel for a while, but rarely catch live shows. Thank you for all your advice. Oh, thank you for tuning in. Tangela. I rather work in the office in the beginning, so if I have any questions, my supervisor is right there to answer. There you go. Tabitha. One thing I've learned as a new coder is I don't want to do OB coding. LOL. It's hard. OB coding was my nemesis back in the day. Back in the day of ICD-9. I hated OBGYN. I hated OB coding. Did not want to do it. I would prefer to do baby than mother. I hated it. Now, it's all right. I can do it. But it's not my favorite, right? No, not my favorite one would probably be cardio. That's my big nemesis now. OBGYN is nothing now. But trust me, I understand. It was totally not my favorite either. And now that it's 10, ICD-10, of course, the diagnosis things completely changed, but you have to have the code and then the other code with it. And you got to remember to code the weeks of gestation. And oh, yeah. Not a fun time. That's why I prefer carpentry. Okay. That's why I love ortho and I love podiatry, because that's my carpentry work. I stick with the bones, that's what I do. So yeah, but yeah, it has its pluses and its minuses working at home. I mean, if it's important to you to be comfortable, some people say, well, I like that I don't have to get up and get dressed and, do all that and fix my hair and do my makeup and do all that. And if that's you, but just keep in mind that there are going to be times when maybe you might have to be on Zoom or something, and you might have to be presentable to the doctors and things like that. Having relationships with your doctors, as far as like being able to talk to them and know what they're doing and know what they're talking about in their notes, is a little bit more difficult when you're on email. And that's what I encountered too, even for my guys, when I'm, we have an established relationship. They know better. But they did take advantage when I was at home for 5 months. And they were like, oh, well, we don't have to respond. We don't have to do that. Oh, no, really? Okay. So I would make sure I need a response to this email. And so they would respond, and I was like, okay, but then after a while they were like, when are you coming back? You need to be back. And I was like, okay, I'll be back. So I came back. 5 months. 5 months. 5 miserable freaking months, man. I couldn't no more. I was like, no, I can't. No, we're not doing this. We're not. I have my own office at work, so it's not bad, obviously, because I can close the door, and it's just me in there. So, yeah. So, but that's the way it is. Working from home is good, but it's also, it's good in that you don't have meddling people around you, but you do have instances where people are bored. They might want to message you and things like that. So you kind of have to watch out for those types of things too. People can see, like your manager can see how long you've spent in a record. That's also something to keep in mind. These electronic medical records, they have a stamp every time you touch something. Every time you move in a page, every time you add something, there's a record, a whole log of stuff that you've done. So the longer you're in a record, they might, if they're auditing them and they're being a stickler, they may question, why were you in this record for so long? So you could have walked away from the computer, you could have walked away, you could be doing anything. You could have left and came back. But you do that too many times, obviously you're going to get in trouble, because that's like literally going AWOL and walking off the clock, Johanna. Blue, between outpatient and inpatient, which one is more difficult to work? Hi, Tanika. Thank you for the blue heart. So, when it comes to inpatient or outpatient, which one is harder? So, it really all depends on how you were trained. For me, I have heard people say, oh, yeah, ICD-10 PCS, which is the inpatient coding, that is so much easier than the CPT book. I don't know how you manage the CPT book. I'm like, dude, the codes are already created in CPT. You know, the only thing you have to do with CPT is, of course, E&M, which to me isn't hard because I went through the whole book. When I studied E&M, what I did was I read the book cover to cover because they had warned me. They had said everybody is failing this portion of the school and they're having to retake this. And I'm like, well, mess on that. I'm not going to retake this. You know, are you kidding me? So I said, well, I'm going to read the whole thing. And people were asking me, you know, why are you doing that? You know, why are you taking the time to read all of that? And I said, they go, well, we don't have to do that. All you have to do is the assignments. And I'm like, that's the problem. That's why people are failing, because they're missing out on those fundamentals. So that's why I started to read the whole thing cover to cover. And since then, I mean, that's helped me. And on my Patreon channel, not to plug, but I'm going to plug. On my Patreon channel, I'm breaking it down. That's, if people have asked me to do E&M, I've always kind of struggled to think of how am I going to approach this. But I said, okay, if people know the fundamental basics, then when we get into the big part of the actual notes and how we break it down, it's going to make sense to them. But if I try to just give them notes and say, okay, it's 99213 or it's 99205, they're not going to really understand when I'm saying, okay, how many elements of history do we have here? What are you know, what am I doing here? You know, because E&M changed, now it's medical decision making or based on time. You know, it's important that they still learn these things, because for prophy coding and for ER, the elements are still the same. You still have to be able to hit a certain number of elements for the history, for the review of systems, and for the physical exam. So those are things that are still important to know. So people can be working anywhere. So that's why I say, okay, I'm going to break it down to the genesis. And so that's why I started off this year doing. And with that, you know, when you're on the outpatient side, you're going to see E&M. There's no getting around that. Unless you're going to be in a clinic that doesn't have E&M, right? Which, like PT and OT, right? Physical therapy, occupational therapy. They're not looking at E&M. Okay, they have a very specific set of codes that they use. So unless you get into something like that, you know, but then you have to be careful, because if you do, some employers don't always take that as experience. I have done research with these job listings, and I see some of these job listings say, if your only experience has been in PT and OT, this does not count to us as experience. And I was kind of shocked. But when you think about it, there's not the variety, and it's very limited in the procedures that they use. So you want to be able to give yourself the opportunity to be able to code anywhere. And in the outpatient side, naturally you're going to be coding for, like, you can code for the ER, you can code for urgent care, you can code for any of the clinics, the specialty clinics, you can do that. With the inpatient side, you have to know specifically about different things, and you have to look at the documentation differently. Whereas on the outpatient side, we are looking at what are they absolutely treating, and on the inpatient side, what are they treating them for? Okay, so the rules are going to be different. And to me, outpatient has been easier, but that's been my coding home, so it's really hard for me to say. For the inpatient side, I can see its pluses, right? Where there's no E&M, but you do have to, because you're getting money for the facility on the inpatient side, that's what they're coding for, is for the facility. You have to make sure that the diagnoses are sequenced properly, because that does affect the amount of money that the facility receives. You have to make sure that the procedures are correct, because these procedures are in the ICD-10 PCS book, where you're having to create those codes, versus in the CPT book where they're already made on the outpatient side. You know, if you have one thing wrong in the code, it screws up the whole code. So you have to know your approaches, you have to understand the body systems, you have to be able to understand all of those things. So knowing inpatient, that means that you're really, really proficient with anatomy and medical terminology, and then knowing your surgical approaches and why they do these things. So understanding that language, because that language is so different. In CPT, a removal is a removal is a removal, right? It's a removal. You get into that CPT, you get into the ICD-10 PCS book, and then they say, well, the patient had a removal of the appendix. Okay, removal. No, that's not how you find it in that book. It's under extraction. So, really? Who would think of that? Is it extraction? I hope I got that right. Did I say that right? Is it extraction? Oops. Is it extraction? No. What is it? Is it extraction? You see? That's why I need to go back over this again. Is it extraction? Yeah, it's extraction, isn't it? Is it extraction? Appendix. Yeah, it's under extraction. It's like, really? So, oh no, it's a resection, not extraction, it's a resection. Total removal is a resection of appendix. Whatever. So the language of the PCS book is way different, and you have to learn it. Christina, Johanna, inpatient I feel would be the hardest because you have to build the codes. Johanna says okay. Cheryl, hey Blue, my name is BLEU. How did you get your first medical coding job? Christina says, career step told me to stay away for inpatient, especially with no medical background. Tracy says, I don't like PCS. That's why I went outpatient. But Cheryl, I got my first job in medical coding going through a temp agency, which I recommend to all brand new medical coders is go through a temp agency, register with a temp agency that specializes in medical professions. Because I did, right? I got put on an assignment that was for 3 months, and while some people may foo-foo the temp agency, that was what got my foot in the door. You know, I had this assignment for 3 months. I didn't get selected. It wasn't on technical ability. Like I said, the girl was mean. So I went to another place, and so I got another assignment, and that was a long-term assignment, but that position led me here to my coding home. But it was two temp positions that I had, and that was giving me experience. But I would have never gotten my foot in the door had I not been through the temp agency. So I do recommend registering with the temp agency when you're finishing school. Some employers will accept you if you've been through a program, and they will say you can start, but you need to get your certification in 3 months, or you need to get it in 6 months, or you need to get it within a year. I've heard somebody, they were very generous, and they said you have 2 years to get your certification. So working all that time as a medical coder and not having a certification, that's pretty good. However, you're probably not going to make what a medical coder would make with a certification. So it's very important that when you're out there, you're technically trained. You can start with a temp agency. You know, start in medical records, start in release of information, start with prior authorizations, medical billing. Medical billing, you don't have to be certified to be a medical biller. You don't even need a medical coding certification. However, it does help when you do have a medical coding certification to get a medical biller position, because that's giving you exposure to codes. And that is good experience to put on your resume so that you can continue your search for a medical coding position. You don't have to stay in those positions forever, folks. It's just temporary. It's just meant to get you some experience and get your foot in the door. Tangela, I was blessed. I got my first job where I currently work. I was transferred. I took the pre-assessment exam, passed, had an interview, and was hired on. That is awesome. That is really awesome. Christina, any of the jobs you're talking about, Blue, is what I've been looking for at jobs. Cool. Cheryl, thank you for your advice. Which agency did you go through? Unless you're from my hometown, it's not going to matter. So the way that I tell people to find agencies is to Google temp agencies or temporary agencies for medical professionals or medical personnel, and the whole list will pop up. If I did this for the city of Dallas, and I'm not in Dallas, but I wanted to see how many were there in a big city. And there was quite a few that popped up. There was like 10 or 12 that popped up that were specifically for medical professions. And if I'm a new coder, that would be exactly where I would go. And I would immediately put my resume on file with them, because they're not going to expect you to be available all the time. You can tell them what your availability is. If you are currently working, I would not stop working with whatever job that you're doing, because with the temp agency, you don't know when you're going to get a call. But if you say, well, I'm available in the afternoons, or I'm available on Tuesdays and Thursdays, then they say, okay, then you can, I guess, call in however they have it set up, and say, hey, I'm available for work, see if they have anything. And it's possible that they will look, and then they will contact you to see, but you have to be proactive, because these temp agencies are looking at your behavior. And if you are enthusiastic and you're engaged and you're ready to go, that's what they're looking for, because you are a reflection of their company. And if you do a good job, if you're enthusiastic, if you have a good attitude, if you show up to work on time, if you do your work, and if you ask questions appropriately, and you want to learn, then that's going to make them look really good. And then you may find yourself with an offer from that facility, because a lot of times those facilities will, instead of hiring on somebody, they say, okay, we're going to go through the temp agency and hire somebody from there, but we want to try people out first before, so we can see if there's chemistry. Because the chemistry of any department that you work in, and especially in medical coding, the HIM field, health information, the chemistry of that department is very critical to getting a lot of stuff done. If you have people who just can't get along, or whatever, it makes things very difficult, and it makes things not fun. So they will sometimes test out people from the temp agency. Hey, we really like so-and-so, so let's go ahead and bring them back over here. Or, so-and-so didn't work out. They have a bad attitude. We just didn't like it. They seemed, like they weren't really excited to be there. We need another person. So that is something that, it happens. Sometimes people don't always get along. You don't always like where you're working. And that's okay. But if that's the case, then the beauty of working for a temp agency is that you can move on, and there's no hard feelings, and you'll still get another job. Let's see. One Smile says, awesome, very practical video, Blue. Thank you, Blue. You're welcome. But yes, so those are the things that I've learned in my time, doing this and trying to be prepared and trying to share this information with you guys, and hopefully, somebody will register. I've had people who said, well, I never thought to try working for a temp agency, but and they'll write me like a month later, hey, Blue, I did what you said. I applied and they got me a job, and now I'm working full time. There you go. And sometimes people get, discouraged because they say, well, it's only a couple of hours, or it's only like a day or so, and I don't have time to do that. Well, those are some of the things that are just being put out there. You don't have to take everything. You don't have to take every assignment. But at the same time, if it's going to get you some experience and you need to make money, it's a good thing. And the more that you take on, the temp agency is going to want to make money. And how do they make money? They have a human product, essentially, to put it very lamely. They have a human product. And so if you're working, they're making money. If you are not working, they are not making money. The idea is to keep lights on and the food on the table. So in order to do that, if they have good workers, hey, we can get these people in, and I've had many good experiences with temp agencies. When I lived in Hawaii, I worked for a temp agency, and they got me a job right away. And it was very hard at the beginning to find a job, because I tried on my own to find a job. I wasn't a coder back then, so I worked in a warehouse. They got me a job within a week. And, I worked in a warehouse, and I was a secretary. I did like a lot of shipping warehouse. So that was a lot of fun. I mean, it was a very good experience. And, after working for them for 90 days, the warehouse took me on. So I was a permanent employee after that time. And that's when I got all the other benefits and everything else. So, I mean, it was nice. But that's taking that extra step and going out there and working with a temp agency. And again, temp jobs are temporary. They're not meant forever. And it can always lead you to something better. And you're welcome. So, but yes. All right. So, are there any questions about remote coding or working from home or a school working? Not working for a school, but going to a school where they're not teaching you. Hopefully, I gave you guys enough study tips to be working on. Like I said, study for only an hour. That's a good way to gauge yourself, so that you're not trying to burn yourself out. Even if you've got your certification, make sure that you're still studying, because you're still going to have to take these assessment tests when you are out there in the real world, because they will be like, testing you, because they have to. They have to see what your knowledge is, and if you're going to be a good fit for them and their company. Try your best, guys. Try your best. If you don't understand something, you've got to ask. You've got to find a mentor. You've got to find a tutor. Even if you have to put a little bit of money out for a tutor, that's fine, because at the end of the day, it's only a benefit to you to help you to better understand. Sometimes people just don't know how to explain. And if you get with somebody that does know how to explain, it can take away a lot of frustration. At least that's just my advice anyway. So, but I guess we can go ahead and wrap it up. I did another long show again. But anyway, it's all right. All right, guys. Well, I guess I will go ahead and, I see a comment coming in. Could you share about your Patreon, please? Is it possible to find answers there from you for confusing cases in the CPC training course? Thank you for the blue heart, Cynthia. Well, I mean, okay, so what I have on my Patreon, you're welcome, Milani. What I have on my Patreon is exercises that I make up, and it's I mean, it's not like AAPC stuff, you know what I'm saying, like from the book or anything like that, but it's just stuff that I make up. It's like quizzes that I have on diagnosis coding. Some people have told me, man, these were really hard. And I do that on purpose, because it's preparing you for the real world. This is stuff that I see. This is stuff that I see coders that they miss a lot. New coders, when I get them and I train them, because I've trained many a new coder. And when I see that they don't grasp certain things, and even veteran coders, that they have a difficult time, sometimes like with injury coding, and they come up with some off the wall thing, I'm like, no, let's pull out the coding clinic and here we go. And they're like, oh, or it's in the book, here we go. And so that's what I do on my Patreon channel. And I do crossword puzzles. I don't do a lot of word searches, but I have done them in the past. But I do crossword puzzles for medical terminology to help you, because making it into a game so that you learn is able to, trigger those memories. And so that way you can get better, get sharper with it. I have found some illustrations, that I've used as like worksheets. So there's those on there. Right now I'm doing a series on E&M. We're going to E&M Genesis. And E&M Genesis being that this is from the beginning, because I feel like when, people are trying to learn E&M and everybody has the same idea of like, I hate E&M. You shouldn't hate E&M. It's boils down to the doctors getting paid for their cognitive work. How can we do this? How do we match this up? And it is just learning how to use the E&M tool, learning what everything means, what the history, review systems, physical exam, their past social, family history, and all this other good stuff. What does that mean? What does the table of risk mean? And that's what I'm doing from the beginning. And I started it the last week of December. and it's going to carry on through. It's going to take a while because I'm literally going through each week, going through a different thing. And so what I'm having the people on my Patreon do, if they're participating in it, is I'm giving them the worksheet of like 10 questions. Some it's a few more questions and some it's less questions, but it's about 10 questions. And I'm having them fill it out. So I ask the questions, and then like for like a history, I was like, what would be a good example of a history, like a 4-point history? You know, location, duration, context, severity. What would be a good example of that? So that way they can actually put themselves in that frame of mind. And then I give them the answers that I've said, and if their answers are similar, and that's the week later, then they know that they're on the right track. They also know that they can ask at any time, hey, I'm stuck. And I can explain that to them. And I've had people who are on my Patreon channel who have reached out, hey, I need help with this. And, I'll help them real quick or whatever. Some of the higher levels are at $25 to start. It's 1 hour of tutoring time is included in the month. And they don't have to use it the same month if they want to keep pledging. But you get access to everything starting at $10 per month. And it's everything that I post and everything that I have posted. You get access to all of that. And at $25, you get the 1 hour of professional coaching. You get or 1 hour of tutoring. It's up to you. And it's over Zoom. We meet, and it's whenever you want to. So if you decide that you only want to pledge for a month and you don't use your 1 hour in that month, it does not expire until you say, hey, Blue, I want to cash this 1 hour in. Okay. And then we'll meet and then, go over whatever you need to. If you pledge for a whole year, there's other benefits to that. In the $10 level, if you pledge for a whole year, what was it? I think it's one. So if you pledge for a whole year, you get a discount at the $10 level. If you pledge for a whole year, you have a choice. This is bonus. If you sign up for an annual membership, you can choose one bonus of the following: either 1 resume and cover letter rewrite, or 3 hours of a Zoom session. So you get either one if you pledge for a whole year at $10. And I think it's like 100 and something comes out to. But that's just a benefit, side benefit of that. $25 if you go for that. Of course, you get everything, all the levels, but it includes 12 total hours of one-on-one time with me via Zoom, and you may schedule multiple hour sessions. So if like you want to do 2 hour sessions instead of 1 hour, that's fine. And you can do that because you've already paid for the whole year. So you can use it all in a month if you wanted to, or if you wanted to break it up, that's fine. You will also receive a cover letter and resume rewrite included with your annual package. So that's already included. You don't have to choose between the tutoring and the and the resume rewrite. It will already be included. So if you're interested in that, absolutely. And then there's higher levels. There's $50, and that includes 2 total hours per month. And then it's the same thing where the cover letter and rewrite and the resume is already included in that. The VIP, you get 4 total hours per month of tutoring. So it's basically, paying it all up front. And you can get access to everything. So 4 total hours of tutoring time. The bonus for the annual membership sign up, if you did that, it includes 48 total hours of one-on-one tutoring time with me via Zoom. You may schedule it in multi-hour sessions until it is exhausted. You will also receive a cover letter and resume rewrite included with your annual package. So if you sign up for the annual one, there you go. But yeah, so it's a lot of contact, as far as like with me. But I tried to make a lot of games. I tried to do things that are fun because I know learning can get boring. I did a couple of exercises about like phobias. Like, what is a phobia for spiders? It's arachnophobia, right? And so there's just different ones, and I put a lot of resources there, resources that I don't put on YouTube, but because sometimes when I put stuff on YouTube, it doesn't get the best reception as far as like people engaging in it and stuff like that. So that's why I just put it on Patreon. So I do a lot of those things there. I share videos about myself. I talk about my day. I haven't done it a lot lately because of the volume of the things that other things that I've been doing. But I try to do a shout out video. I talk about personal things that are going on with me that I don't talk about on YouTube. I talk about work. And again, I don't bring this up on YouTube because the audience is smaller with Patreon, and I feel like if they're paying for this, they're paying for more candid me. And what I do with this money is I pay for my certification exams. Because of my patrons, I have been able to take 2 certification exams last year. I also paid for additional education last year, and I also pay for books. And so that helps me to be a better medical coder for you all and bring you all more information and more things that will help you. So that's why I try to do what I do on Patreon. I didn't know anything about Patreon years ago when I started this, but I had requested, somebody asked me to do it and I said, okay. And so there's so much information on there. You get access to tons and tons of puzzles and worksheets and critical thinking. Critical thinking is like little short scenarios sometimes, or sometimes it's like a note. And what it is it's not designed to trick you, but it is designed to have you think. Think what you would do, because these are not like your cookie cutter scenario questions. These are real world type thinking scenario situations. Like, what would you do in this situation if a patient came in with this? And so that's what I do. And I try to do the rationale on a lot of them. Sometimes I'll just put what the answer is because it's pretty well straightforward. If I need to make a explanation video, usually the people have been really good about telling me, hey, can you explain this one? And I was like, okay. So I'll explain it and then, kind of break it down. And then they're like, oh, okay, well, that makes sense. So yeah, I tried to do that, so hopefully it helps. Let's see. All right. So, okay, what did I miss? Why isn't this thing moving? Okay. Okay, so Quita says, what is HCC coding? Hierarchical condition category coding. So this has to do with all diagnosis coding, and it is basically abstracting diagnoses for statistical reasons and for research and things like that. So that's essentially what it is. There is no evaluation and management. There's no procedure coding when you're doing HCC coding. So a lot of people get real excited about it. But it stunts your growth as a medical coder. So while it is a good place to get experience, it is not a place that I would recommend to stay for a long time. There's people that stay in it, and that's what they do. They become very specialized in it. But to be an HCC coder, it's not just about picking up diagnoses. It is about understanding what you're picking up. So you do need to be very proficient in medical terminology, anatomy, and pathophysiology. You have to be, because anatomy and physiology and pathophysiology and medical terminology is going to help you. I get asked questions all the time by HCC coders, and I'm like, are you sure? Are you sure you're I mean, they go, well, I don't get it. And I'm like, okay, well, I mean, this and this and this, and I explain it to them. So you really have to be proficient in those things. You have to know what the symptoms are of things so that you're not doing things that you're not supposed to be. So HCC is all diagnosis coding, but it is, I mean, you have to be good at least medical terminology, anatomy, and pathophysiology and physiology. Yeah. Justin says, wow, I thought I'd miss a session. I'm late. Justin, the VIP one basically is close to basically being in school with a one-on-one student-teacher ratio. You could create a list of books for the students to read and create a coder training program. Would be nice. It'd be cheaper than school. One Smile says, thank you very much. I will definitely check your Patreon. Thank you so much. Johanna says, I missed that part. What is $10? So $10 on Patreon will get you access to the E&M Genesis that I'm breaking down. And then let me go read this from here. So $10 will get you access to all the things that I've already previously posted and all the answers and everything. So with $10, it says a video shout out thanking you for being so awesome and supporting me. 2 medical terminology crossword puzzle and answers per month. 2 10-question coding quizzes with answers. 1 critical thinking exercise with rationale, which is sort of just the I need to update that for the E&M Genesis right now. I've traded that with that. Oh, and then I will take requests for videos. Bonus, if you sign up for an annual membership, you will choose 1 bonus from the following, and you're paying it all upfront, essentially. 1 resume and cover letter rewrite, or 3 hours of a Zoom session for tutoring or professional coaching with me. So you can use that time at any time once you pay for your annual membership, and you can just go from there. But if you sign up for an annual membership, there's a little bit of a discount. I think it's 10% discount that you have. Is it? Let me look. I haven't updated this in a while. I think it's 10%. Let's see. Well, I think it's 10%. Yeah, it's 10% off. So not a bad deal. You know what I mean? Like, you get like a lot of, quizzes and everything else. So, but yeah, that's what I'm doing for Patreon. What I'll do is I'll post the quiz, and then I'll tell them when the answers should be expected. And then I do that. I just did a critical thinking refire because apparently back in August, I forgot to put the answers. And one of my patrons had gone back and caught it. I was like, oh, thank you for getting that for me. So I did that. There's a lot of anatomy worksheets that I've been posting up there too, because anatomy is very important for us medical coders to know. That is critical for us to know. But yeah, so a lot of really good exercises here, I think. I work on them. But yeah, then you have videos about me and whatever you want, so. But yeah, that's what the $10 is, Johanna. And like I said, you don't have to pledge past a month if you want to just check it out. It's still not a bad deal. You still get exercises out of it. You still get access to all those things. So, I think, like I said, I think it's a good deal. But that's what I do with my Patreon money. It goes back into training me for more things. It will, in the future, it will go towards my expenses for attending conference, so that way I learn more, and of course that I can network more. And if I see anybody from the channel, I have said this, when we get back to regular life and we get back to in-person meetings, I swear I'm gonna freak out, but in a good way, if somebody recognizes me, like, oh my gosh. This year, I don't know if you guys know Julie Brown. So Julie Brown was a medical coder on YouTube. She no longer has her channel on YouTube, and I think that's a shame. And I told her, I was like, you really got to come back, because us AHIMA members are very small in number, and she has an AHIMA membership, and she's a HEMA coder too. She's got her certification with AHIMA. So I went to the conference this year up in Dallas, right in the spring. They had their the TexHEMA conference in Dallas. And so she was there. And so, of course, Brandon and I went there to see Brandon get his Rising Star Award. So Brandon is he graduated high school. He got his Cpc certification. This guy has been taking off ever since then. Now he's 20. He is like, if you're interested in checking out his bio, it's at texhema.org. And you can see that his bio for getting the Rising Star Award. But he spotted her. He's like, oh my God. He goes, that's Julie Brown. It's Julie Brown. And so I was like, oh, we gotta go over there. So we both ran over there, and we're like, we were just standing there. And so she goes, oh, do you need to talk to this lady? We're like, no. We're huge fans. We ran up like complete idiots. We're like, we're just huge fans. She's like, oh my goodness. And so, it was awesome meeting her. And I'm saying, she said that that's not the first time that's happened to her, because when I first started my channel, I didn't really watch a whole lot of people, but I did see her, and I did see Kate, Coding with Kate, and Kate was a CCA. I don't know what happened to Kate. I would love to have met Kate, but I don't know. Like, she just completely fell off the face of the earth. Like, I don't see any videos from her. She hasn't done any updates at all, so I don't know what happened. But Julie Brown I did see, and so I was like, oh, okay, so that's what this is, because you want to see if there's anybody else on here. And so, but like I said, I keep my channel clean. These are my ideas. This is what I do. I don't watch anybody else. It's about me on my channel and my audience. So, but meeting Julie Brown was really awesome. And I said, that's going to be me one day. There's going to be people coming up to me and saying like, oh my gosh, you're Medical Coding with Blue. So I can't wait for that. I can't wait for that. But that would be where that money from Patreon is going to. So we'll see. We'll see what this year brings. But I'm telling you what, I can't wait for the next in-person conference, because I will not attend virtual conference and pay the same thing. No, I don't think so. Not doing it. As attending in-person conference, no. Really, no. Mm-mm. So I need to be someplace if I'm going to be spending that kind of money, because I'm not doing it online. I'm not going to do it. So yeah, that was my experience. But yeah, we completely ran up to her like total fans, and we were like, we're huge fans of yours. And she's like, oh, and it's like, you got to come back. You got to get back on YouTube. And so I would have loved to collaborate with her. Like, she's, when you collaborate with another YouTuber, you want it to be somebody that, you admire. You want it to be somebody that you look up to, and Julie Brown is completely so smart. And I don't know, huge fan. Yeah. Yeah, Tangela, she said, yeah, I was watching Coding with Kate. I wonder what happened to her too. I don't know. I know that Brian Quee, who is the medical coding geek, he reached out to her several times and she just never responded, and I'm like, that's kind of weird. Like, she just kind of fell off, but she's very, like, what I loved about Kate is that she was so awesomely herself. She just, she's nerdy like me with the books, but she just was herself, and she was unapologetically herself. And that's what I enjoyed watching her, but like I said, after her, I just, her and Julie, those are the only two I watched. So, but yeah, I liked her. I liked her quirkiness. I liked Kate's quirkiness, because she's like that. She just, but I know she had a hard time finding a job, but I know she was very persistent. And everything that I tell you guys, is what she's done, and she was very persistent when in her search too. So, but I think she ended up being a trauma registrar. So that's where she went, because she said that she was just having a hard time, and she documented it all. So I don't know. But yes, so, but I enjoy my audience, and I enjoy my channel. And I'm so proud of us. We've hit 15,000, 15.5 now. So very awesome. Thank you guys. All right. Was it cancer? I thought it was a trauma. It's trauma and tumor. I don't know. I have to go back on her videos. It's been a while since I seen her stuff. She was very excited about coding. Yes. And I like how she showed it, like when I show it, I know I completely nerd out, but at that point you don't care. When you nerd out, you just don't care. But she was a lot like that. She didn't hold back when she was very excited, Yeah. That was very cool. Kate was very cool. But Kate, if you're out there, you're watching, come back. Let's see. Justin, cancer registrar isn't bad. Great about AHIMA's programs is that you can get the cancer registry add-on and not for much more. Hi, Blue, you're still on here. Enjoy your weekend. Yes, I'm trying to close it out. But we start talking about this other stuff. So Justin says, I heard only a few places in the country hire for cancer registrars. There's some places that it's an absolute must that they have a cancer registrar on staff. So it's just like, but yeah, it's a very specialized field. It's, it's for people who are really invested into learning more about that. Tangela says, I'm not sure, but she was a registrar. I'm going to have to look it up. I'm going to have to look her up again. But definitely. But you know what? She has a cult following because her channel is still growing. Her channel is still growing, and I think that's awesome. But, I wonder if she knows, like, hey, hope nothing, but anyway. But I'm going to go ahead and wrap this one up because I have been on for a while and it's almost 10 o'clock here. So that means I know it's almost 11 o'clock on the East Coast. Oops. Anyway, y'all have a good weekend, and I will see y'all back on Monday. And like, subscribe, share, and I will see y'all next time. Bye.